In a kingdom hidden deep within a sun-dappled forest, a place where rivers sang and trees whispered ancient secrets, lived a fairy princess named Elara. Her wings, shimmering like dragonfly wings at dawn, could carry her to the highest branches of the tallest oaks. Her laughter was said to make flowers bloom out of season. Elara wasn't just loved. She was the very heart of her kingdom, a beacon of light and joy. But where there is great light, shadows often creep, longing for a taste of that brilliance. In the darkest part of the same forest, where sunlight dared not tread, lived Morwen, a sorceress whose heart had grown cold and gnarled like the twisted roots of the swamp trees she called home. Morwen envied the fairies' light, and most of all, she envied the radiant joy of Princess Elara. She believed that if she could capture Elara's light, she could finally feel the warmth she had long forgotten. So, with a bitter heart, she began to weave a spell, a dark and insidious enchantment designed not to destroy, but to steal. One beautiful evening, as the moon cast a silver glow over the kingdom, Morwen's spell drifted through the forest like a silent, black mist. It found Elara as she slept, dreaming of dancing with fireflies. The spell didn't harm her physically. Instead, it wove itself into her very essence, targeting the source of her light, her memories. When Elara awoke the next morning, something was terribly wrong. She looked at her own shimmering wings with confusion. She didn't remember how to fly. She saw her friends, the other fairies, and felt no spark of recognition. The laughter that once echoed through the trees was gone, replaced by a quiet, unsettling emptiness. The kingdom felt her loss immediately. The flowers drooped, the river's songs turned mournful, and a perpetual twilight began to settle over the land. The fairy elders, their faces etched with worry, gathered around their silent princess. They tried everything: ancient songs, potions made from morning dew, and stories of her own brave deeds, but nothing worked. Elara's mind was a beautiful, locked room, and the key was missing. Desperate, the eldest fairy, Lyra, consulted the Crystal of Whispers, an ancient artifact that held the echoes of all things. The crystal showed her a vision, a single luminous flower, the Lumina Bloom, hidden at the peak of the treacherous Shadowfang Mountains, a place no fairy had dared to venture for centuries. The crystal whispered that only the nectar of this flower, offered by a hand with pure intent, could break the spell. But there was a problem. Elara, the strongest flyer among them, was grounded. The journey was too dangerous for any single fairy to undertake. Just as despair began to set in, a small, unassuming creature stepped forward. It was Pip, a gnome who was the royal gardener. Pip was often overlooked, known more for his grumpy demeanor and his obsession with mushrooms than for bravery. But he had tended Elara's favorite moonpetal garden since she was a little fledgling, and seeing her so lost had broken his stout heart. "I will go," he said, his voice surprisingly firm. "I may not have wings, but I know the paths of the earth, and I will not let our princess fade away." The fairies were stunned, but seeing the determination in his eyes, they agreed. They gave him a pouch of glowing moss to light his way and a map drawn from ancient memory. Pip's journey was harder than he could have ever imagined. He navigated treacherous ravines where the wind howled like a hungry wolf. He crossed rushing rivers on rickety rope bridges left by forgotten civilizations. He even had to outsmart a grumpy mountain troll by trading his prized collection of shiny river stones for safe passage. All the while he thought of Elara. He remembered how she would sneak into his garden to tell him silly jokes, how she once helped him replant an entire bed of fire lily after a storm, her tiny hands covered in dirt. These memories fueled his every step, pushing him forward when his legs ached and his spirit wavered. He wasn't a hero, he was just a gardener who missed his friend. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom, Elara sat by a still pond, staring at a reflection she didn't recognize. Though her memories were gone, her kind heart remained. One day, a young fledgling fairy trying to learn to fly tumbled from a branch and landed in the pond with a splash. Without a second thought, Elara waded into the water and gently helped the scared little fairy back to the shore, wrapping him in a soft leaf to warm him up. She didn't know why, but the act of helping felt familiar. It was a tiny flicker of light in the vast darkness of her mind, a muscle memory of her own kindness. This small act sent a faint pulse of light through the kingdom, a sign of hope that the elders felt instantly. Finally, after days of relentless climbing, Pip reached the peak of Shadowfang Mountain. There, bathed in an ethereal glow, was the Lumina Bloom. It was even more beautiful than the crystal's vision, its petals pulsing with a soft, warm light. Carefully, Pip collected its sweet nectar in a small crystal vial. The journey down was just as perilous, but the thought of returning to Ilara gave him speed and strength he didn't know he possessed. He ran, slid, and scrambled his way back to the forest, arriving exhausted and covered in dust, but clutching the vial as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. He found Ilara in the garden, listlessly tracing patterns on a leaf. He knelt before her and with a trembling hand offered her the vial. "Princess," he said softly, "I don't know if you remember me. I'm Pip. This is for you." Ilara looked at the grumpy-faced gnome, and for the first time, a flicker of something ancient and deep passed through her eyes. She took the vial and drank the nectar. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a brilliant light erupted from her, so bright that everyone had to shield their eyes. Colors swirled around her and memories flooded back in a vibrant torrent. Her first flight, the taste of honeydew, the sound of her own laughter, and the kind face of a gnome who always made sure her favorite flowers were perfect. When the light subsided, Ilara's wings fluttered, and she slowly lifted into the air. A huge beaming smile spread across her face. "Pip," she cried, her voice full of its old music. She swooped down and hugged the little gnome so tightly he squeaked. Laughter returned to the kingdom, the flowers perked up, and the sun broke through the twilight, bathing the land in a golden glow. Far away, Morwen felt the surge of light and recoiled. She hadn't captured Ilara's magic. She had only revealed its true strength, a strength that came not just from one princess, but from the love and courage of all her friends. Ilara learned that her light wasn't just inside her. It was in the connections she shared with everyone around her. And Pip, the grumpy gardener, was no longer overlooked. He was a hero, a small gnome who had climbed a mountain not for glory, but for a friend. The kingdom was brighter than ever before, a testament to the fact that even when the darkest spells try to make us forget who we are, acts of courage and kindness will always help us remember. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to join us for more adventures.